Before we start, I just want to quickly give you an idea of what to expect in this video. This video is not one where I'm going to bash Chris Chibnall, nor is it one that will sing his praises when there are obvious mistakes in this season finale. Rather, this video is one where I will try to discuss these two episodes as objectively as I can. I know there's some controversial topics that will be raised from these episodes, but my goal for this video is not to focus solely on these things, but rather to look at the episodes as a whole, and hopefully entertain you in the process. If your opinion differs to mine at any point in the video, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I just hope we can have a sensible discussion about it in the comments. Once again, my ultimate goal is to hopefully entertain you, so if you do like this video, please show some support any way you can afterwards. Anyway, now that that's gotten out of the way, let's move on to the video. As you may have seen in the title of this video, this is actually part 2 of a review that I first began a couple of weeks ago, where I looked at the first 8 episodes of Series 12 of Doctor Who. If you haven't seen that video yet, or if you have but yet need reminding of what I said about the season up to that point, then I'd suggest quickly watching that first before carrying on with this video. I'm actually going to pause this video now just for you, so then you can watch that first part. There'll be a link in the top right corner that will hopefully pop up now, which will take you over to that first part. Once you finish there, then you can come back and continue with this video. Don't worry, I'll still be here when you get back. Okay, we all caught up? Great.
Then we'll begin.
So as I said in the first review I did, Chris Chibnall had done the impossible with his second series of Doctor Who. This is because he was the first New Who showrunner that had made his second series better than his first. Jodie Whittaker had started to grow more into the role of the Doctor, as she had a lot more to play with as a character, especially with this new darker side to her. The companions sort of stayed the same, with very few moments of something actually good coming from them. But the actual ideas behind these episodes were really creative and had serious potential. The issue, however, for some of these episodes was that there was almost too many ideas and so felt messy and rushed. Yet when executed well, we got to experience some really standout episodes. For example, Fugitive of the Jadoon and The Haunting of Villa Diodati. So when coming up to these final 2 episodes, I was quite excited to see how Chibnall was going to close off quite a good series. After all, the thing that would actually make or break the season was going to be the finale, as it had all been leading up to that point. Would it deliver, or would it disappoint? Let's try and answer that question by starting with the first part of this season finale, the Ascension of the Cybermen. We begin this episode with a monologue from one of the standout monsters from the series, the lone Cyberman. As he explains the fall of the Cybermen during the Cyber War, he carries on this monologue saying that
which is dead can live again in the hands of a believer.
It's very ominous, and a great way to start this episode before the opening titles. We're engaged by this villain and excited to see this rise to power. After the opening titles, we are then taken somewhere we never thought we would go in this episode. Ireland. We are shown this short clip of a husband and wife finding a baby who has been left stranded, and so they adopt him. We see him begin to grow up a little before we cut away to the Doctor and her companions. This small segment, although strange, worked very well as it had began to set up mystery within the episode. Why were we seeing this? How is this young Brendan character important to the story? And so just looking at these 2 moments, the episode really kicks off to a great start. But then the quality begins to drop from then on. We're taken back to the end of the Cyber War, where the Doctor and her companions have some fancy gizmos to try and save the rest of humanity, or at least what's left of it. We are introduced to 7 brand new side characters, none of which stand out or have actual personality. but yet it seems we are expected to feel sorry for them as they get killed off by the Cybermen's floating heads.
Nobody cares! Nobody cares!
Now, Doctor Who has always had one-off side characters being a major element of the show, and when executed right, it can be brilliant. But this episode just can't seem to do that with these people. Some of them end up being in both episodes of this finale, and yet there's more character development in this red cactus from a couple of minutes dialogue than there is in all of these characters combined. Not only do we have forgettable side characters, but once again we have forgettable companions aiding the Doctor. Their characters have been reduced back to cardboard cutouts, telling the Doctor and the audience what we already know.
The systems didn't stop them, Doc.
I know. They destroyed everything we brought with us. I know.
We haven't got anything else to defend ourselves or them.
I know!
It frustrates me that we get companions like this who could be used so well, but end up having to give this type of dialogue. Thankfully, the lone Cyberman shows up and still looks and acts as epic as he did in the episode before. The Doctor and companions then get split up, and so we end up going back and forth between these two groups. However, as much as this episode feels like there's a lot going on, not much actually does. Graham and Yaz's group end up finding a cyber warship with a bunch of new Cybermen, who in all honesty do look very good. Their plot is to try and survive for the rest of the episode. The other group, containing the Doctor, Ryan and this guy, end up finding out about a safe point for humans from the Cybermen, which is where they end up trying to get to. And that's it for most of the episode. Not much else happens of interest. It feels very much like filler, setting up minor moments for the next episode. Now yes, we are treated to some more scenes of Brendan as he grows up, becomes a police officer, and ends up surviving falling off a cliff. And these are really the only interesting scenes in the episode, because we are again having to work out why we're seeing all of this. The ending of this episode also tried to leave us in suspense, as we see Graham and Yaz getting shot at by Cybermen, as well as the Master showing up from the Boundary, which by the way is not explained at all, since he somehow escaped from the Kasavan realm. But since they aren't even willing to even try to explain anything about Missy, they definitely didn't feel like they needed to explain this huge plot point. And there we are. That's the end of the first part of this finale. As I've already said, not a lot happened, even though it felt like it did. However, when first watching this, I was definitely still excited about the next part, as we had been given some setup for what was to come. I really did hope that they would give the season a satisfying payoff. I definitely did not want an episode that would break continuity or split a fan base. But surely they couldn't do that. Could they?
The child is you.
I can't believe you've done this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Chris Chibnall.
Look, I'm gonna be honest and put my neck out on the line here. When I first watched this episode, I actually enjoyed it.
You were the chosen one!
The surprises that came from the Timeless Child reveal manipulated me into thinking that this was a good episode. But the more I thought about it, and after a rewatch a couple of days later, I realised that that wasn't the case. But I'll talk a little more about that later on in the video, as I want to focus right now on the actual episode without looking at the reveal. We start off this finale with the Master taking the Doctor away to Gallifrey, where we get some really good dialogue between Jodie Whittaker and Sacha Dhawan, who do exceptional work with what they're given. We then cut to Graham and Yaz, but we find out they're not actually being shot at by the Cybermen, and it was actually just a trick of editing, because they're nowhere near them when they're shooting. Now coming back to the Boundary, Ryan is stuck there with this guy and Kashamas. Because I'm not talking about the Timeless Child just yet, it means that I can't talk much about the Doctor, as she's pretty much within that plot point for the majority of the episode. So we're left with the companions having their season arc hopefully come to fruition. Now if you've watched my first video, you'll know that's not the case, because these companions don't have real story arcs. Ryan ends up throwing a bomb at these Cybermen, and that's his arc because he couldn't throw a basketball at the start of the series.
What?
I mean, it's definitely not up there with good companion arcs in Doctor Who, but Graham and Yaz don't really get much either. Instead, they have a conversation with each other about how much they've grown as characters. But there's a major issue in your storytelling if that's not obvious to the audience, and so has to be said by the characters themselves. It's bad writing. Plus, just because the characters say it, doesn't mean it's true. The thing is, we have to be able to see that growth to be able to agree with it. And so because we haven't actually seen it, this scene will never be able to fulfill its purpose. So, this episode so far has had issues with writing, fulfilling any series arcs, or providing any closure on the series. Surely, it couldn't ruin anything else. Yep, this episode had to end up killing off one of its best villains in such a long time. The Master kills the lone Cyberman in order for him to have the Cyberium, which also means he can create the Cybermasters, who are Cybermen with Time Lords inside instead of people. Slight plot hole by the way, how can the Cybermasters regenerate if the Time Lords are dead? Would the Time Lords have not regenerated instead of dying? I don't know if there's something I'm missing, but if I have, it's definitely not being explained well. Now I genuinely believe the lone Cyberman had so much intrigue and mystery about him, as well as being a scary, grotesque standout character within the Cybermen. And he stood out so much that he could have carried on from this episode being the new Davros of the Cybermen. But instead of that happening, he ends up becoming one of Chibnall's major writing cliches, the big red button. The lone Cyberman gets set up to have a death particle inside of him, which ends up being a narrative get out of jail free card used to defeat the Master and Cybermasters. Now this doesn't happen till towards the end of the episode. By this point the Doctor has found out about the Timeless Child and has escaped from the Time Lord Matrix, and also the companions have found their way onto Gallifrey, but only in order for them to get sent back to Earth. Anyways, back to the death particle. We see the Doctor and the Master once again having their normal standoff, with the Doctor having the chance to destroy all of them. However, in the past the Doctor has never been able to follow through, because they've not been able to kill another race as he did the Daleks and the Time Lords. And so as normal, the Doctor doesn't give in to killing them all. That is until Kashamas comes in, deciding that he is able to end off the Cybermasters whilst saving the Doctor. Now because of the Doctor normally being a pacifist and never being able to destroy an alien species, you'd think she'd try to find a different solution, but this isn't the case. Instead she runs away, allowing Kashamas to commit genocide to the last parts of her species. I understand the reason why this happened, but in terms of writing consistent characters, this doesn't make sense. You'd think the Doctor's motives of not pressing the button is because she doesn't want to wipe out a species. However, she's fine with that as long as she's the one not killing herself in the process. It's such a strange moment, but definitely not the most controversial thing in the episode. Yes, we can now finally talk about the elephant in the room. Graham's relationship with this woman. Oh, who am I kidding? It's obviously the "If you're lost, you can look and you will find me, time after time." Again, before I start this segment, this is only my opinion. If you have a different one, please feel free to share it in a mature way in the comments. I am more than willing to talk about this and see what you think about the topic. Anyways, the Timeless Child. As I said earlier, I was shocked by this revelation, so much so that it convinced me that it was a good reveal. However, I realised later on that just because it was shocking didn't mean it made sense from a continuity or narrative point of view, nor did it make the episode and the season actually good. Instead, I think it's created major difficulties for the past, present and future of Doctor Who. It first of all changes a lot of the history that came before it, because now whenever anyone watches back William Hartnell's time as the Doctor, he's no longer the original.
I am the Doctor. The original, you might say.
I think not!
He's just one in the long line of many that came before him. It's also changed conversations about the Doctor only having a certain amount of regenerations, because that statement is now pointless when we realise the Doctor can't be limited to a certain amount of regenerations anymore. At least I don't think so. If that is now the case, where's the stakes in every episode if we know that she can regenerate countless times so that death no longer matters? Also, it now means that anyone she meets can actually be the Doctor. Now I understand what the writers were trying to do with the Doctor becoming this all-powerful person and the foundation of all Time Lords. I also understand how that infuriated the Master. But it makes the Doctor sort of like a god in this universe, which narratively is not a great way to go. I said in my first review that the reason the Doctor's character was a lot better was because she now had character flaws which weren't there back in Series 11. And by making the Doctor the god of this universe, it means we can't focus on those flaws because of how powerful she is. She's gone from being this traveller to now becoming the centre of the universe. And there's not much left that you can go with her character in a narrative setting. Now let's flip this thing on its head, because Chibnall has actually been extremely clever with what he's done in revealing this to us. When the Master shows the Doctor about the Timeless Child, we see recordings of these things, and so we know that they have happened. However, the reveal of the Doctor being the Timeless Child isn't shown to us in these recordings, but rather said to us by the Master. Now this is a long stretch, but hear me out. The Doctor even says before any of this,
"Do you really think I'm going to believe anything that comes out of your mouth?"
And the only confirmation we get is from the words of the Master. And so I think Chibnall has left the door open on purpose for this decision to be reversed. I've heard countless times that Chibnall apparently has a 5-year plan for the show. If that is the case, there's definitely still more to come for this story. We know there's more mystery around the Doctor anyways, as there's parts of the Matrix that have been erased. Maybe this mystery includes us finding out more about the Timeless Child, and we might end up finding out it wasn't the Doctor, and possibly somebody else. By the way, for those that aren't sure about the outcome of the Master and his legion of Cybermasters, let's just say I'm pretty sure they're definitely coming back to return. 100% just jumped into a TARDIS or something. Anyways, the Doctor maybe not being the Timeless Child is just a theory.
A film theory.
Whoa. Don't want to get copyrighted.
You didn't see anything.
And even if it isn't, I'm still interested in where this show might go. And Chibnall wasn't able to make me feel like that after his first series. So I will continue to stay loyal to the show and loyal to my point that Chris Chibnall has done the impossible. He made me care even when I thought I wouldn't. So how would I rate this series of Doctor Who? Because of the way the series ended, it did have an effect on the thing as a whole. Better episodes suffered because of how those elements were treated in the finale. But the thing is, Doctor Who has never been a show that has had consistent quality. Even at its height of popularity years ago, it would still have its share of good and bad episodes. And so to see episodes really start to stand out well in Chibnall's era is a good sign in the right direction. Maybe it's too little too late, but I personally will continue to have hope for the future of this show and what it might bring. And so, after 10 episodes, 2 reviews, and 1 big controversial topic, I'm going to finish off this video by giving this series of Doctor Who an optimistic 7 out of 10. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, even if you might not agree with my views. But as I've said, I'm willing to carry on the discussion maturely in the comment section down below. Anyways, if you have enjoyed, please consider giving this video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as I've got some really good ideas in the works at the moment. In our next video, we're going to be moving back to the MCU to look at whether Iron Man 2 is better than we remembered. Hopefully, I'll see you then. Have a great day and continue to stay safe. Bye!